What do you do when life doesn't go according to plan? When what you thought was going to be doesn't come to be. And especially when the best laid plans of mice and men oft go astray, that kind of moment, where the saddest words of tongue and pen are these, what might have been. I remember when my wife and I were first married, we were in a student ward, the good old BYU 174th. Yeah, there's a lot of wards there. And there was a young couple. We were all young couples, a bunch of newlyweds trying to figure out life, but with all life ahead of us and therefore all the hope in the world. Talk about newlywed rose-colored glasses on, right? Well, there was a couple, the Oldhams, wonderful, wonderful couple, Matt and Celeste, and they were as full of life and love as the rest of us. And after a few months, we noticed that Celeste was walking to church a little slower than the week before. We didn't think much of it until a few weeks later, she was really leaning on Matt's arms. And then a few weeks later, he was wheeling her in on a wheelchair. And a few weeks later, realizing this is not a temporary problem. This is multiple sclerosis, and it's going to affect the rest of her life. Talk about getting punched in the face with reality when you feel like you're too young to handle things. That began a 20-year battle. And 20 years later, it was something of a 174th Ward reunion at Celeste's funeral. And we'd all grown up a bit since then. We'd all grown up and realized how wonderfully naive we were to think that life would stay easy for all of us when it didn't, and it hasn't for any of us. There's something about reunions. It's not just the gray hair, it's the battle wounds, and it's the depth and it's the understanding that life was harder than we thought it was going to be. I'm thinking of speaking of young couples, I had a class a few semesters ago at BYU where there were 5 members of the same family in one class. The Bennetts, they were awesome. Several brothers, a sister-in-law. It was like family reunion every day in class. It was awesome. And one of those brothers is now back in my class this semester. So I was asking him for the catch-up. How's the rest of the fam doing? He was describing, she's on her mission. This brother and sister-in-law, they had a baby. I'm like, I'm so excited. That's wonderful news. And he said, yeah, she was born with a rare genetic defect and she's having daily seizures, and my brother and his wife are just trying to figure out how to handle all this. And my heart just sunk as I thought, these are kids. I know my students don't like to hear that, but that's what I was when I got married. Just a kid with all the hope for a glorious future. And man, some people have to grow up fast. Sometimes it doesn't happen when you have a baby. Sometimes it's shortly after marriage. Sometimes it's when you're young. Sometimes life will present its challenges to you eventually. Sooner or later, we will realize, okay, it's like what Elder Maxwell used to say. You realize that life was more than a couple of deep knee bends and brisk push-ups. It's like, wow, God means business when he wants us to grow up in him, and growing pains are real. This is way harder than I thought. Well, where's Easter in all of this? This is Easter. At least it's Friday and Saturday before Sunday morning comes. Those dark days of crucifixion, those questioning days of Saturday, what happens before the glorious Sunday morning rolls around? But let me show you something that Jesus says to these troubled disciples on the road to Emmaus. Long faces, peace be unto you. Why are you troubled? Why do thoughts arise in your hearts? What's going on? They start to explain, well, past tense, we thought that Jesus was the guy and he died, and so it's over. And then Jesus says this. I love this. This is the phrase for today. Luke 24, verse 26. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? Ought not? Think about that. What is Jesus saying? Isn't this the way things were supposed to be? Didn't he tell you repeatedly especially from the moment right before transfiguration. From transfiguration on, the messianic secret is past. It's time to let you know what's really about to happen. We're going to go to Jerusalem. I will go to Jerusalem. I will be betrayed into the hands of sinners. I will be crucified and rise again the third day. And they're scratching their head going, that's the weirdest parable he's ever told. Wonder what he meant by it. They had no clue that this one wasn't a parable. This was a prophecy. This one's real. And here's Jesus telling these flabbergasted, befuddled disciples, isn't this exactly the way things were supposed to be? Didn't he tell you? In fact, didn't the Scriptures tell you this from the very start? Check this out. He says to them, thus it is written, and thus it behooved Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead. I mean, for most of the rest of this resurrection narrative, he's teaching the disciples on the road to Emmaus Scripture to tell them it's been right in front of your face the whole time. It was supposed to be this way. How could you not see this coming? Well, I can see why. In fact, in the John account, actually, my bad, this is still Luke. Luke 24, verse 44, when Jesus appears to the others, these other disciples, he's been with the two in Emmaus. He comes to the 10, if Thomas isn't there yet. We'll get to him later. And he says an interesting thing. All things must be fulfilled which were written. Think about that. All things must be fulfilled. The Scriptures said it would be this way. I told you it would be this way. And thus it has to be this way. Makes me wonder, what's he already told me? What have the Scriptures already tipped me off about as far as what life is going to be like? Meant to be easy? Meant to be hard? Yeah, meant to be hard. Growing up in God, growing pains and all. I sometimes joke with my students that you picture we were rushing into the council in heaven, a little late as usual. There were 2 pamphlets outside, and one of them was a pamphlet about a day at the gym, and the other was a pamphlet about a day at the day spa. And not realizing that the gym was the Father's plan and the day spa was Satan's plan, we looked at it real quick and we grabbed the day spa one and like, okay, sounds awesome. When's my turn on earth? And when Jesus raised his hand and said, here am I, send me, I'll honor the Father's plan. We're like, oh yeah, we're with him. It's like, I guess he's going to run the day spa. It ain't no day spa. Thankfully, we get days at the spa, but in terms of life in general, it's a day at the gym. And at the gym, there's pain, there's sweat, there's groans, there's torn muscles, there's building some bulk, there's growth, there's progress. Everything God said we needed and everything we fought to obtain, the chance to come to the gym. To the saints, when they went to Missouri, the Lord told them, their first revelation there, good luck here. It's going to be rough. And when they were driven out, what does God say? I told you it would be that way. To these disciples wondering, how could Jesus die? I told you I would. How could the Oldhams go through that? How could the Bennetts go through that? How could any of us go through life as hard as it is? The Father tried to prepare us all and sent the Son to be able to help us through it all. And Easter Sunday is the day it finally dawns on us. It was worth it. Every hard thing about the human condition will be made up for in the resurrection. Every wrong will be made right. Every ash becomes beautiful. I'm looking forward to another 174th Ward reunion where Celeste will run to all of us. I'm looking forward to a day when every one of my students, you included, who has suffered and struggled, we'll see it was all good. And instead of shaking our fist heavenward, as we're sometimes tempted to do, we will kneel in humble gratitude for he who conquered the human condition by taking it upon himself and then lifting it from the ashes onto glory. That's Easter too. To embrace the difficulty of Friday and the confusion of Saturday, trusting that Sunday will come.